What happens when a lone pilot must trust his mortal enemies to stop an extinction-level threat from beyond known space? You won't believe how Captain Jack O'Rourke turned centuries of interstellar conflict upside down in the most unexpected way. The crimson warning lights flashed across the cockpit as Captain Jack O'Rourke fought to maintain control of his battered spacecraft. The once pristine vessel now resembled a floating scrapyard, its hull scorched and punctured from the relentless assault by unknown forces. Through gritted teeth, Jack wrestled with the controls, each movement sending jolts of pain through his injured shoulder. His comm unit crackled with static, occasionally interrupted by the panicked voices of his former squadron mates. Beyond the reinforced viewport, the vastness of space revealed its latest terror, an amorphous black cloud stretching across light years, consuming everything in its path. Entire star systems blinked out of existence as this cosmic horror advanced, leaving behind only absolute void. Jack's sensors screamed warnings that made no sense, readings that defied every known law of physics, temperatures dropping to impossible lows, and gravitational anomalies that twisted reality itself. The attack had come without warning during a routine patrol near the Orion Nebula. One moment, Jack was admiring the spectacular stellar nursery. The next, he was fighting for survival against beings that shouldn't exist. Their weapons didn't just destroy, they unraveled matter at a fundamental level, reducing billion-ton asteroids to quantum dust in seconds. His squadron, the pride of Earth's defense fleet, had been wiped out in minutes. Now, alone and outnumbered, Jack faced an impossible choice when the enemy transmission came through. Not from the devouring darkness outside, but from the very species humanity had been preparing to wage interstellar war against, the Krylaxians. Their ambassador's voice, though distorted by translation software, carried an urgency that transcended species boundaries. They proposed an alliance against the greater threat, a temporary ceasefire in their centuries-old Cold War. We've barely scratched the surface of this cosmic nightmare, and already the stakes couldn't be higher. What would you do if you were in Jack's position? Stay tuned, because this decision will launch a chain of events that will push our hero beyond anything he's ever faced before. The Krylaxian message repeated in perfect English, their translation technology having adapted instantly to human speech patterns. Jack's fingers hovered over the communication controls as memories of past encounters flooded his mind, the border skirmishes, the failed diplomatic missions, the countless lives lost on both sides. Yet something in the ambassador's tone cut through his ingrained mistrust. It wasn't fear exactly, but rather an ancient weariness that resonated with Jack's own exhaustion from years of conflict. A proximity alert snapped him back to the present. The devouring cloud had changed trajectory, accelerating toward his position with impossible speed. Sensor readings painted a horrifying picture, entire solar systems vanishing in real time, their mass converted into some form of negative energy that fed the expanding phenomenon. Jack watched helplessly as a distant gas giant imploded, its massive volume compressing into nothingness within seconds. His tactical display highlighted multiple Krylaxian warships emerging from subspace nearby, their distinctive crystalline structures glinting like shattered glass against the backdrop of destruction. They weren't attacking, instead. They formed a defensive perimeter around what remained of the sector's inhabited planets. This unprecedented act of cooperation between traditional enemies spoke volumes about the true nature of the threat they faced. Jack initiated contact, his voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around him. "This is Captain O'Rourke of the Terran Defense Fleet. Your offer remains valid." The response came immediately, delivered in flawless English by Ambassador Zwax Kra, her bioluminescent patterns shifting through complex emotional spectra visible even through the view screen. "Time is not a luxury we possess, Captain. Our scientists have identified a window of opportunity, but it requires immediate collaboration. As Jack considered his options, the gravity of their situation became painfully clear. Historical enmities meant nothing against this new threat that threatened to erase all life from existence. The Krylaxians, long dismissed as emotionless conquerors by human propaganda, now stood as potential saviors, or perhaps prisoners sharing the same sinking ship. We're just beginning to understand the true scope of this catastrophe, and trust me, what comes next will challenge everything you believe about survival and sacrifice. Don't look away now. The choices our characters make in the next few moments will redefine the future of two civilizations. The first joint operation between human and Krylaxian forces unfolded with calculated precision, each species bringing unique advantages to their desperate mission. Jack found himself aboard the Krylaxian flagship, a massive crystalline structure that seemed to bend light around its edges. The air carried an electric charge, and the temperature fluctuated in ways that defied conventional thermodynamics, typical characteristics of Krylaxian technology that had always baffled human scientists. Ambassador ZYX Kra led Jack through corridors that appeared to shift and reconfigure themselves as they moved, her crystalline exoskeleton refracting the ambient light into dazzling patterns. She explained how their species had encountered similar phenomena millennia ago, though never on this scale. Your linear perception of time limits your understanding, she communicated through both spoken words and subtle shifts in her bioluminescent patterns. This entity exists simultaneously in all temporal states, consuming not just matter but potential futures. Their destination was the command center, where Krylaxian tacticians worked alongside hastily integrated human AI systems. The contrast between organic and synthetic intelligence created an eerie harmony. Holographic displays projected data in both binary code and crystalline fractals, while the combined processing power began unraveling the mystery of their shared enemy. Jack marveled at how seamlessly the two technologies merged, despite centuries of mutual distrust. Through the main viewport, they observed the approaching wave of annihilation. It wasn't merely consuming matter. It was erasing the very possibility of existence. Regions touched by the phenomenon showed no residual energy, no background radiation, just pure non-existence extending infinitely in all directions. Scientists from both species scrambled to interpret readings that violated fundamental physical laws, their combined knowledge creating breakthroughs neither could have achieved alone. The tactical situation grew more dire as smaller tendrils of the main entity began probing ahead of the primary wave. These autonomous extensions demonstrated alarming intelligence, targeting strategic points with surgical precision. One such tendril penetrated the defensive perimeter, forcing human and Krylaxian vessels to coordinate their countermeasures in real time. The resulting exchange showcased the strengths of both military traditions, human adaptability complementing Krylaxian technological superiority in ways that surprised commanders on both sides. As the crisis deepened, cultural barriers began breaking down faster than anyone had anticipated. Human pilots learned to read the subtle color shifts in Krylaxian communication patterns, while their counterparts adapted to human verbal cues and body language. In the heat of battle, old prejudices melted away, replaced by a shared determination to survive against impossible odds. The command center buzzed with activity as officers from both species worked side by side, their combined expertise creating innovative strategies that neither force could have developed independently. The command center transformed into a crucible of innovation as human and Krylaxian scientists pooled their resources against the encroaching threat. Dr. Elena Vasquez, humanity's leading xenophysicist, found herself working alongside Zitharon, a Krylaxian research director whose crystalline matrix pulsed with mathematical equations visible only in ultraviolet light. Together, they pieced together fragments of understanding about the entity's nature, each revelation more disturbing than the last. Their analysis revealed that the devouring wave operated on principles similar to quantum entanglement, But inverted, instead of creating connections, it severed them completely. Every atom consumed didn't just cease to exist. It erased the very probability of its existence across all possible timelines. The implications staggered even the most seasoned researchers. Entire alternate realities were collapsing as the entity expanded, reducing infinite possibilities to absolute nothingness. Jack witnessed firsthand how this newfound cooperation pushed both species beyond their limitations. Human engineers modified Krylaxian phase shift technology to create localized temporal bubbles, while their counterparts adapted human neural interface systems to enhance their crystalline processing capabilities. The results were groundbreaking, hybrid devices that could predict the entity's movements with unprecedented accuracy, though the margin of error remained dangerously high. Tactical operations took on a rhythm of their own as pilots from both species developed combined maneuvers. The humans' intuitive approach to combat meshed unexpectedly well with the Krylaxians' precise vector calculations, creating attack patterns that confused and disrupted the entity's probing tendrils. Each successful engagement generated valuable data, feeding back into the growing database of knowledge about their enemy. Yet progress came at a cost. The strain of maintaining this forced alliance showed in the tense interactions between officers and the occasional flare-ups of old hostilities. Some human crew members struggled with orders coming from Krylaxian commanders, while certain Krylaxian tacticians found human improvisation unsettling. Jack found himself mediating disputes that threatened to undermine their fragile cooperation, his natural diplomatic skills proving as crucial as his piloting abilities. In the midst of this tension, small acts of mutual respect began to bridge centuries of animosity. A human medic tended to a wounded Krylaxian officer, learning to interpret their bioluminescent distress signals. Krylaxian technicians modified environmental controls to better accommodate human physiology, while their human counterparts developed interfaces that translated crystalline resonance patterns into comprehensible data streams. These exchanges, though minor individually, collectively strengthened the foundation of their uneasy alliance. As the devouring entity drew closer, its behavior evolved in alarming ways. The tendrils began exhibiting coordinated swarm intelligence, their attacks growing more sophisticated with each encounter. During one particularly intense skirmish, Jack watched in horror as a tendril executed what could only be described as a feint maneuver, drawing defenders away from a critical relay station before striking with devastating precision. The loss of that station crippled communications across 3 sectors, leaving dozens of ships isolated and vulnerable. The command team discovered that the entity wasn't just consuming matter and probability. It was learning. Each engagement added to its understanding of their tactics and technology. Krylaxian analysts detected patterns suggesting the entity was reverse engineering their weapon systems in real time, adapting its defenses to counter their most effective strategies. What had started as a mysterious cosmic phenomenon was rapidly becoming a sentient adversary with capabilities far surpassing their own. Dr. Vasquez and Zitharon uncovered another chilling aspect of the entity's nature. It wasn't content to simply consume. Microscopic probes sent into affected regions returned data showing traces of the entity's essence lingering behind, slowly corrupting surrounding spacetime. These remnants acted like seeds, spreading outward and accelerating the main wave's advance. Entire star systems showed signs of preemptive collapse, their fundamental constants destabilizing hours before the primary front arrived. The psychological toll on the combined forces mounted as they witnessed the systematic erasure of known space. Veteran Krylaxian warriors, who had faced extinction-level threats before, displayed signs of crystalline stress fractures, a physical manifestation of their species' equivalent of combat fatigue. Human crew members reported increasing instances of temporal disorientation, experiencing brief flashes of alternative realities being snuffed out as the entity approached. Despite these mounting challenges, the cooperative efforts between species reached new heights of sophistication. Tactical teams developed adaptive protocols that changed with each engagement, making it harder for the entity to predict their responses. Research divisions implemented real-time data sharing systems that allowed both species to contribute instantaneously to problem-solving efforts. Even the most hardened skeptics began acknowledging that survival depended entirely on maintaining this unprecedented level of interspecies coordination. The pressure of leadership weighed heavily on Jack as he navigated the complex web of responsibilities thrust upon him. Each decision carried consequences that rippled through both human and Krylaxian chains of command, forcing him to balance immediate tactical needs against long-term strategic considerations. When a critical choice arose about diverting resources to protect a human colony versus a Krylaxian outpost, Jack found himself caught between conflicting loyalties and ethical dilemmas that no training could have prepared him for. The human-Krylaxian partnership faced its most severe test yet when a major offensive resulted in disproportionate losses among human forces. Rumors spread quickly through the fleet, fueled by survivors' accounts of Krylaxian units withdrawing from key positions during crucial moments. Jack personally investigated the incident, discovering that the apparent betrayal had actually been a calculated risk by Krylaxian commanders to preserve their species' unique phase-shifting technology now crucial to developing a potential countermeasure against the entity. These tensions manifested in unexpected ways throughout the fleet. Maintenance crews reported increased incidents of sabotage, while communications channels buzzed with coded messages that hinted at growing dissent among both species. Jack spent hours mediating disputes between human and Krylaxian officers, often finding himself defending decisions that satisfied neither side completely. The weight of these choices etched new lines into his face, and the once confident pilot began showing signs of the immense strain he carried. Yet amidst these challenges, moments of genuine connection emerged. During a rare downtime, Jack joined a group of engineers from both species attempting to modify a captured tendril sample. The collaborative effort required them to develop entirely new methods of communication, combining human intuition with Krylaxian pattern recognition. As they worked together, barriers began to fall. A human technician cracked a joke that somehow translated perfectly through the bioluminescent display of his Krylaxian counterpart, triggering unexpected laughter that broke weeks of tension. These small victories against the backdrop of impending doom created a complex tapestry of relationships throughout the fleet. Traditional enemies found themselves sharing meals in mess halls, exchanging stories of home worlds that might soon cease to exist. Old prejudices softened as individuals from both species recognized their shared vulnerability in the face of extinction. Jack observed these changes with cautious optimism, understanding that while personal connections were strengthening, the institutional mistrust between their governments remained a significant obstacle to overcome. A breakthrough came during a routine analysis of the captured tendril sample, sending shockwaves through the scientific community of both species. Dr. Vasquez and Zitharon discovered that the entity's fundamental structure bore striking similarities to ancient Krylaxian artifacts predating their recorded history. These artifacts, long dismissed as mythological relics by modern Krylaxian scholars, contained patterns matching the entity's quantum signature, suggesting a connection far deeper than anyone had imagined. The implications of this discovery cascaded through their understanding of the crisis. Krylaxian historians, reluctantly collaborating with human archaeologists, unearthed fragmented records hinting at a catastrophic event in their distant past. According to these documents, their ancestors had encountered a similar phenomenon and sacrificed entire generations to contain it. The artifacts weren't mere historical curiosities, but components of an ancient weapon system designed specifically to combat entities like the one threatening them now. This revelation triggered a frantic race against time as researchers from both species worked to decode the artifact's activation protocols. The process proved maddeningly complex, requiring simultaneous interpretation of quantum equations, crystalline resonance patterns, and archaic linguistic structures that defied conventional translation. Human pattern recognition specialists partnered with Krylaxian temporal physicists, their combined expertise gradually unraveling the device's secrets. Meanwhile, the entity responded to their increased activity with alarming aggression. Probing tendrils intensified their attacks on research facilities, demonstrating an uncanny ability to target locations where artifact analysis was underway. Several labs were lost entirely, their personnel and equipment erased from existence along with their findings. The losses created a terrible paradox. The more they learned about defeating the entity, the more it seemed determined to prevent their success. Jack found himself coordinating security details for multiple research sites, balancing the need for protection with the imperative to share information across species lines. The tension reached a breaking point when a human security team refused to allow Krylaxian researchers access to a newly discovered artifact fragment, citing concerns about potential espionage. The resulting standoff threatened to unravel the entire cooperative effort until Jack intervened, establishing a joint custody protocol that satisfied both sides' security requirements while maintaining open access to vital information. The deployment of the first artifact-based weapon system marked a turning point in their desperate struggle, though not in the way anyone had anticipated. Designed to disrupt the entity's quantum coherence, the prototype device instead triggered a cascade effect that temporarily enhanced the phenomenon's destructive capabilities. When activated near a tendril formation, it created a feedback loop that accelerated local entropy rates by several orders of magnitude, causing nearby star systems to collapse into singularity faster than predicted models. This catastrophic failure forced both species to fundamentally reassess their approach to combating the entity. Scientists realized they had misunderstood the artifact's true purpose. Rather than weapons, they functioned as containment nodes in a vast network that required precise synchronization across multiple points in spacetime. Each node contributed to a larger field that could isolate and potentially quarantine sections of the entity, but only when activated in specific sequences that mirrored ancient Krylaxian harmonic patterns. The revised strategy demanded unprecedented levels of coordination between human and Krylaxian forces. Teams of pilots from both species had to position these nodes with exacting precision while maintaining protective formations against increasingly aggressive tendril attacks. The timing requirements proved especially challenging, as the activation sequence needed to account for relativistic effects across different spatial coordinates. Human intuition proved crucial in compensating for microsecond variations that Krylaxian systems initially struggled to process. As they refined their techniques, the combined forces developed complex ballet-like maneuvers that maximized their defensive coverage while positioning nodes. Krylaxian vessels utilized their superior phase shift capabilities to create overlapping fields of protection, while human fighters exploited their agility to draw tendrils away from critical activation points. The resulting formations evolved organically, with each species contributing unique advantages that complemented the other's weaknesses. Despite these advances, the psychological toll of operating so close to the entity's influence grew increasingly apparent. Pilots reported experiencing vivid hallucinations of alternative realities collapsing around them, while ground crews handling the artifacts suffered from severe temporal disorientation. Medical teams from both species worked together to develop countermeasures, combining human neurological expertise with Krylaxian resonance therapy techniques to help personnel cope with the strain. The entity's response to their containment efforts escalated dramatically, revealing aspects of its nature that shook both species to their core. As the network of activated nodes began forming its first successful quarantine field, the phenomenon manifested what could only be described as predatory intelligence. Tendrils organized into complex geometric patterns, executing maneuvers that demonstrated not just adaptation but strategic foresight. During one particularly harrowing engagement, Jack watched in stunned disbelief as the entity deliberately sacrificed a portion of its mass to breach a seemingly secure containment zone. Krylaxian researchers detected something even more disturbing. The entity was communicating, not through conventional means, but through subtle manipulations of fundamental constants in the surrounding space. Their instruments picked up patterns in the fluctuations of Planck's constant and the speed of light that matched ancient Krylaxian linguistic structures. The messages were incomprehensible, yet carried an undeniable sense of purpose and intent. Some believed they were witnessing the emergence of a consciousness that existed beyond normal spacetime parameters. This revelation forced both species to confront uncomfortable questions about the morality of their actions. Were they fighting a mindless force of nature, or attempting to exterminate an intelligent entity that simply operated on scales incomprehensible to their limited perceptions? The debate raged through command centers and research labs, with scientists and philosophers from both species struggling to reconcile their survival instincts with the ethical implications of destroying what might be a form of life far beyond their understanding. Jack found himself at the center of these discussions, his position as liaison officer making him privy to classified information from both human and Krylaxian sources. He witnessed top-secret meetings where military leaders argued for complete annihilation of the entity, while scientific advisors advocated for attempts at communication and possible coexistence. The weight of these decisions pressed heavily on him, especially when evidence suggested the entity might be responding to their containment efforts with something resembling distress signals. Amidst this philosophical turmoil, practical challenges continued to mount. The entity's attacks grew more sophisticated, targeting not just physical assets but the very infrastructure of their cooperation. Key nodes in the containment network began failing mysteriously, investigations revealing that microscopic traces of the entity had infiltrated their manufacturing processes. Both species faced the horrifying possibility that their enemy had evolved to exploit the very technology meant to contain it, using their combined knowledge against them in ways they hadn't anticipated. The culmination of their efforts arrived with terrifying suddenness as the entity launched a coordinated assault on multiple fronts, testing the limits of their fragile alliance. Nodes across the containment network flickered under unprecedented pressure, their harmonic fields straining against waves of pure negation that seemed to resonate with the fundamental frequencies of existence itself. In the command center, human and Krylaxian officers worked in perfect synchronicity born of desperation, their combined expertise creating a symphony of countermeasures that pulsed through space like a living organism. Jack led a daring mission to reinforce a critical node cluster positioned at the edge of the advancing wave. His strike team, composed equally of human and Krylaxian pilots, executed maneuvers so intricate they defied conventional tactical doctrine. As tendrils lashed out with lethal precision, the mixed-species squadron responded with choreographed patterns that leveraged each other's strengths, Krylaxian vessels generating overlapping phase fields, while human fighters darted through gaps in the enemy's formation, deploying micronodes that strengthened the containment grid. The entity revealed its final evolution, a massive concentration of its mass that began resonating at frequencies matching those of the containment network itself. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed their efforts had been for nothing, as the carefully constructed quarantine field began to harmonize with the entity's own vibrations. But then something extraordinary happened. The ancient Krylaxian artifacts, distributed throughout the network, began emitting counterfrequencies that created interference patterns within the entity's structure. In a display of unity that would have been unthinkable months earlier, human and Krylaxian forces coordinated a masterstroke of tactical brilliance. While fighter squadrons maintained pressure on the entity's peripheral tendrils, capital ships from both fleets aligned themselves in precise formation, their combined energy signatures amplifying the artifact's effects. The resulting harmonic cascade tore through the entity's coherent structure, forcing portions of its mass into isolated pockets that the containment fields could finally seal off permanently. As the immediate threat receded, leaving behind stabilized quarantine zones containing fragments of the entity, both species faced the reality of their transformed relationship. The shared experience of facing extinction had forged bonds that transcended centuries of conflict. Command centers buzzed with cross-species collaborations that continued uninterrupted, focused now on studying the contained fragments and preventing future outbreaks. Former enemies exchanged data freely, their combined knowledge creating breakthroughs in fields from quantum mechanics to xenobiology. Jack stood on the observation deck of the Joint Command Vessel, watching as human and Krylaxian engineers worked side by side to reinforce the containment network. The sight filled him with cautious hope, not just for the immediate future, but for the possibility of lasting peace between their species. The entity had nearly destroyed them, but in doing so, it had catalyzed an unprecedented era of cooperation that promised to reshape interstellar relations forever. The story of Captain Jack O'Rourke and the Krylaxian Alliance demonstrates that even in the face of existential threats, understanding and cooperation can emerge from conflict. If you enjoyed this journey through crisis and transformation, subscribe now to explore more tales of courage and cooperation across the stars. With the immediate crisis contained, the focus shifted to understanding the long-term implications of their victory. Teams of scientists from both species established permanent research stations around the quarantine zones, their combined expertise yielding insights that neither could have achieved alone. The captured fragments of the entity revealed complex internal structures that defied conventional physics, suggesting layers of organization far beyond simple consumption or destruction. Dr. Vasquez and Zitharon led the effort to decode the entity's fundamental nature, their work uncovering patterns that hinted at an evolutionary process operating on cosmological scales. The data suggested that such phenomena might occur naturally throughout the universe, acting as a form of cosmic selection pressure that drove civilizations toward higher levels of cooperation and technological advancement. This revelation cast their recent struggles in a new light. Perhaps the entity's appearance wasn't merely a threat, but a catalyst for growth. The political ramifications of their alliance rippled through both human and Krylaxian societies. Diplomatic channels that had remained closed for centuries suddenly opened, with representatives from both species negotiating treaties that went far beyond military cooperation. Trade agreements emerged that leveraged complementary strengths, human adaptability and creativity paired with Krylaxian mastery of crystalline technology and temporal manipulation. Cultural exchanges flourished as artists and philosophers from both civilizations sought to understand each other's perspectives on existence and consciousness. Jack found himself serving as an unofficial ambassador between the species, his experiences making him uniquely qualified to navigate the complexities of interspecies relations. He participated in ceremonies that would have been unimaginable months earlier, including the dedication of a joint research facility built around one of the largest contained fragments. The building itself symbolized their new relationship, combining human architectural principles with Krylaxian structural dynamics in ways that created spaces comfortable for both species. The technical innovations born from their cooperation began transforming daily life in both civilizations. Hybrid technologies incorporating elements from both cultures led to breakthroughs in energy generation, medical science, and artificial intelligence. Human neural interfaces gained new dimensions through integration with Krylaxian resonance patterns, while Krylaxian crystalline structures benefited from human approaches to material science and engineering. These advances created economic opportunities that further cemented the growing partnership between their peoples. As reconstruction efforts progressed, both species confronted the psychological scars left by their brush with extinction. Counseling centers staffed by human psychologists and Krylaxian resonance therapists worked together to develop treatment protocols for what they termed cosmic stress syndrome. Symptoms included persistent feelings of existential dread, difficulty maintaining temporal orientation, and recurring nightmares of infinite collapse. The condition affected veterans of the conflict most severely, but even civilians who had witnessed the entity's approach from safe distances showed signs of trauma. The shared experience of facing annihilation fostered unprecedented levels of empathy between the species. Support groups formed naturally, with human and Krylaxian participants finding common ground in their struggles to process the enormity of what they'd endured. These sessions often led to profound revelations about each species' fundamental nature, humans discovering new appreciation for Krylaxian concepts of crystalline memory and temporal awareness, while Krylaxians gained insight into human emotional resilience and capacity for hope. Researchers noted fascinating neurological adaptations occurring in individuals who had worked closely with the other species. Human brain scans showed enhanced pattern recognition abilities, while Krylaxian crystalline matrices exhibited increased flexibility in resonant frequencies. These changes suggested that prolonged exposure to each other's cognitive frameworks was creating genuine physiological convergence, hinting at possibilities for deeper integration in future generations. Cultural institutions from both civilizations began documenting the crisis and its aftermath, creating comprehensive archives that would ensure the lessons learned wouldn't be forgotten. Historians worked together to compile detailed records of the conflict, while artists collaborated on multimedia projects that captured the emotional essence of their shared struggle. These works served not just as historical documentation, but as tools for healing and understanding, helping both species process their collective trauma while celebrating their hard-won cooperation. The success of the Human-Krylaxian Alliance inspired similar initiatives throughout known space, as news of their achievements spread to other civilizations facing existential threats. Representatives from various species began arriving at the joint research facilities, seeking to learn from their experience and establish cooperative frameworks of their own. This influx of visitors created both opportunities and challenges, as the original partners worked to extend their model of cooperation while maintaining the delicate balance they'd achieved. Diplomatic protocols evolved to accommodate the diverse needs of different species. The concept of resonance chambers emerged, specially designed spaces where beings with varying biological and cognitive requirements could interact comfortably. These chambers incorporated elements from multiple environments, creating neutral zones where diplomacy and scientific collaboration could proceed without cultural bias. Jack observed how these developments reflected the fundamental principle they discovered during their crisis, that true cooperation required creating spaces where all parties could thrive authentically. The economic impact of their alliance transformed interstellar trade networks, creating new markets for hybrid technologies and fostering unprecedented levels of investment in joint ventures. Financial institutions from both species developed innovative models for cross-species commerce, addressing challenges like differing time perception scales and varied approaches to property rights. These solutions not only facilitated trade but also promoted deeper understanding between cultures, as business partners learned to navigate each other's fundamental worldviews. Educational exchanges became a cornerstone of the expanding cooperation, with universities from both species establishing joint programs in fields ranging from quantum mechanics to xenocultural studies. Students immersed themselves in each other's academic traditions, gaining perspectives that enriched their understanding of both their own and their partner species' approaches to knowledge. This educational revolution produced a new generation of thinkers who naturally bridged the gap between human and Krylaxian ways of knowing, accelerating innovation across multiple disciplines. Long-term monitoring of the quarantine zones revealed unexpected developments that challenged previous assumptions about the entity's nature. Instead of remaining static, the contained fragments began exhibiting behaviors suggesting self-organization and adaptation. Researchers observed patterns emerging within the isolated masses that mirrored evolutionary processes, though operating on vastly accelerated timescales. These observations sparked intense debate about whether the entity represented a form of life attempting to communicate through means beyond conventional understanding. The controversy deepened when a team led by Dr. Vasquez and Zitharon detected what appeared to be deliberate attempts by the contained fragments to manipulate their environment. Subtle adjustments in quantum field patterns suggested the entities were experimenting with different states of existence, possibly seeking ways to interact with the containment technology itself. This discovery raised troubling ethical questions about their continued imprisonment and whether they might represent a form of intelligence worthy of diplomatic consideration. Public opinion among both species polarized around these findings. Some factions argued for maintaining strict containment measures, viewing the entity's evolution as confirmation of its threat potential. Others advocated for controlled experiments in communication, believing that understanding its nature could unlock fundamental secrets about the universe's origins and the nature of consciousness itself. Jack found himself mediating increasingly heated discussions between these camps, his role expanding beyond military liaison to include diplomatic arbitration. The scientific community responded by establishing strict protocols for interacting with the contained fragments, incorporating safeguards from both human and Krylaxian ethical frameworks. Research teams developed sophisticated monitoring systems that could detect and respond to any signs of hostile intent, while allowing for careful observation of the entity's development. These measures represented a careful balance between caution and curiosity, reflecting the complex relationship that had evolved between the allied species and their former adversary. As years passed, the Human-Krylaxian alliance matured into a robust framework for interstellar cooperation, setting precedents that influenced diplomatic relations throughout known space. The initial crisis had forged bonds that continued to strengthen, evolving into a partnership characterized by mutual respect and genuine affection. Annual commemorative ceremonies brought together citizens from both species, celebrating not just their survival, but the transformative power of unity in the face of adversity. The technological legacy of their collaboration reshaped civilization on both worlds. Hybrid advancements in energy production created sustainable power sources that benefited entire planetary ecosystems, while medical breakthroughs extended lifespans and improved quality of life across species boundaries. Educational systems incorporated cross-cultural perspectives as fundamental components of their curricula, ensuring that future generations would grow up understanding and appreciating their shared heritage. Jack O'Rourke, now retired from active duty, devoted his time to mentoring young officers from both species, passing on the wisdom gained from his unique position at the heart of their historic alliance. His memoirs, co-authored with Krylaxian historian Vin Thal, became required reading for diplomatic cadets, offering insights into the complexities of interspecies cooperation that textbooks couldn't capture. The bond he'd formed with Ambassador ZYX Kra exemplified the personal connections that had blossomed between their peoples, a friendship that transcended species differences and demonstrated the universal nature of courage and compassion. Looking to the future, both civilizations embraced a vision of shared destiny that acknowledged their individual identities while celebrating their combined strength. Joint exploration missions ventured beyond previously established borders, carrying the spirit of cooperation to new frontiers. The experience of facing extinction together had taught them that true security lay not in isolation or dominance, but in the willingness to reach across divides and find common ground, a lesson that would guide their development for generations to come. The story of humanity's alliance with the Krylaxians stands as testament to the power of cooperation in overcoming even the most daunting challenges. From the ashes of conflict and the brink of annihilation emerged a partnership that redefined what was possible between species. Their journey reminds us that our greatest threats often carry within them the seeds of our most profound transformations, and that the courage to embrace change can lead to futures beyond imagination.